my song. Let's sing it. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Come on, it's gonna be fucking awesome. You know the words. It's gonna be fucking awesome. That's it, sing. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Yeah!
Howdy, 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 everybody. It's I, Jesse Blaze Snider, the Coolest Geek Alive. How you doing? I'm doing great. I hope you're doing awesome. You know, life is fucking life. And every week it seems like new people die or are assassinated. I did a whole episode of Charlie Kirk for my Monday episode of Everything They Don't Want You to Know. If you really want to be understanding how you should be looking at that from a completely bipartisan standpoint, it doesn't matter who they're telling you did it. No random crazy person shoots somebody live at an event in front of 3,000 people with a sniper rifle from far away. So when I said that, somebody said, it wasn't a sniper rifle, it was he was sniped. He was sniped from far away. That's what government three-letter agencies do. That's not what human beings do. So it's all an op. Don't be fucking suckered in. Start playing the partisan game. I'm a Republican and I'm so sad. I'm a Democrat and I'm not at all. Like, fuck you guys. All of you. This is not another excuse for you guys to be mean to each other. This is an excuse for us all to wake up, recognize that the powers that be want us to be fighting and to stop the fighting, and to start having much more intelligent conversation. So I get into this at much length. It doesn't matter if you like Charlie Kirk, doesn't matter if you love Charlie Kirk, doesn't matter if you hate him. You know, the perspective that I'm holding is your reality. And if you keep just reacting from this, I'm mad or I'm happy or mad, like, we're never going to be able to outgrow this draconian evil governmental apparatus that is controlling the planet. So listen to Everything They Don't Want You to Know, my Monday podcast. It's a really good episode on Charlie Kirk. There's lots of awesome episodes there. Usually I'd promote it at the end, but it just seems worth talking about because in the midst of Charlie Kirk's assassination, one of my favorite actors and creative people died as well, Mr. Robert Redford. And I don't know about you, but I am a huge Robert Redford fan. I happen to be a huge fan of William Goldman, who's most famous for having written the novel and the film version of The Princess Bride. But he's also very famous for having written Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, adapted from the real-life stories about those two outlaws, and All the President's Men, which was a book they said could never be adapted, but William Goldman was famous for adapting things that people had claimed were unadaptable into films. And there's actually a lot of William Goldman movies that Robert Redford is in, which really happens to be how I became a Robert Redford fan, because I was born in 1982. So, you know, even Paul Newman, who's another one of my favorite actors, he's really not my generation. I had to get into him and then like take a step back and be like, oh, wait a second, this was like a guy from a time period that I wasn't around. What other movies was he in? Are they any good? And go dig into them. Paul Newman, I think maybe had kind of come at me from a couple other directions. I really liked the Pool movie that he was in back in the day, the Hustler, and then The Color of Money with Tom Cruise, which I think I saw Color of Money first. But there was a couple different ways where I got into Paul Newman, but it was William Goldman that really got me into Robert Redford, because as I got deeper and deeper into William Goldman's filmography, and he's written so many different movies, so many adaptations, and so many originals, and things that are adapted from his own novels, like Magic or Marathon Man. William Goldman's brilliant. I've done some William Goldman episodes in the past, so Robert Redford's been praised a little bit here or there. But Robert is awesome. And, he's not quite my favorite, like Paul Newman is my favorite, but he's close. He's up there in like a top 10 of some of my favorite actors. And it just came from seeing him in all these wonderful movies that were written usually by William Goldman. And then, that was it. And then also, because I liked him and I liked Paul Newman, the two of them do some movies together, and there's one in particular that we'll talk about at the very end, which is my favorite. But as I often do when somebody passes away who I think has like a really great chunk of films that they were involved in, or films and TV or whatever, that are worth talking about, I come on and I'll do a whole coolest classics for their whole film career. And, when I do the films, the coolest classics or coolest picks on Saturdays, I don't really like to get too deep into them in terms of like plot and story. And for the most part, I'm not really going to be able to do much spoiling here because like I didn't have a lot of prep time for this. I found out that Robert Redford had passed away, and then the past few days I've been busy with other things, so I haven't been able to brush up on too much. But this morning I sat down and I watched like trailers for all of my favorite Robert Redford movies to kind of just remind me and put me in the headspace of some of these awesome flicks that he was in. So, without further ado, we're going to just start counting down from my list of 11. It's the 11 greatest Robert Redford. I mean, and these aren't necessarily the 11 greatest Robert Redford movies because I haven't seen them all. There's actually a bunch of his movies that like I've been on like a short list for me that I want to watch, like The Great Waldo Pepper, and a couple other ones. And over the years, like I've seen some, and then there's some that like I think I saw or I started watching, and I'm not sure if I finished. Like Jeremiah Johnson, which I was watching the trailer for it because I vaguely remember it, but I don't really remember it that much. And so there's a couple of them that I'm like, every Robert Redford movie that I've ever seen, for the most part, I really liked. He's great. And then even something like Quiz Show, which we'll get into in a little bit, which is directed by him, was really excellent. And there's some, movies like The Legend of Bagger Vance, which is like a Will Smith golfing movie, which I had seen back in the day, and it was enjoyable. He I don't know what level of involvement. I think he had directed it, definitely produced it. It's a decent movie. It's not like one of my favorites, but like he doesn't make anything bad. He really generally is just like a super solid filmmaker. The first few bits on the list that we're going to talk about are ones that, are a little bit less Robert Redford movies, if you want to call them that or whatever. But by the time we get past number 8, we're going to get into some of the definitive Robert Redford films, as far as I'm concerned. The ones that I think of when I think of him. And these movies all make me very happy. These are all flicks that I would tell you as a coolest classic. I would tell you as a pick if it was more recent or whatever it is. These are all movies that I love, and we can add them onto the list. So let's start with number 11, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. And, it's a relatively small part for him, but it was nice to see him show up. It's a great movie, and he certainly brings a little bit of gravitas just, with his presence from so many of the other things that he's done over the years, and it's kind of cool to see him in that role. I think there was like an AI 70s Avengers thing that someone had made where Robert Redford was Captain America. And, there's something about that feels really right, and I think that's half the reason why he was chosen for Winter Soldier, because there was a certain amount of, like military man film acumen, something, like just like some star power for that kind of role, patriot man that he really came to represent over a long period of time. He would go back and forth between playing sort of heroic and criminal type characters. And, that's what I know him for, and that's what I love him for. Anyway, Captain America: The Winter Soldier is wonderful. If you've never seen that, Redford also makes a little appearance in Avengers Endgame, but, really, he's no presence in that movie. But Captain America: Winter Soldier is wonderful. Robert Redford's got a small part in it, and he definitely adds to the affair. All right, at number 10, we have an ensemble piece, and this is our first one that is based on a book adapted by the great William Goldman, who was very, very good at doing this. And it's not that it's so fucking hard to adapt these things. William Goldman was just very good at reading the books and then lovingly adapting the films based on the books and based on the wonderful things that were in the book. A Bridge Too Far is excellent. I often talk about how so much of like history of various wars and whatnot, I actually learned through films, and that the sort of like the major military operations of the U.S. government during World War II, I learned about through two films that that ultimately like taught me approximately how we won the war. And those two films are Patton and A Bridge Too Far. Patton famously was sent on a wild goose chase, doing things that were neither here nor there for the war effort, because basically Patton was known as the general for that the Americas had, and if they sent him on a mission, whatever that mission was, it had to be the mission that was important, because they wouldn't send just any general on these other missions. They'd send Patton. So Patton was sent to do things to distract the enemy. Meanwhile, while Patton was off doing the Patton things, the real mission to end World War II takes place in the film A Bridge Too Far. And I mean, they're film versions of the thing, but the reality and the reality and the what do you call it? The film. I mean, it's not very far off. Very, very a decent adaptation. These based. Bridge Too Far is based on a book, this is approximately how America won World War II, through this crazy plan for A Bridge Too Far. It's an incredible ensemble cast. There are so many heavy hitters, great actors in this movie, from Sean Connery to Michael Caine to Laurence Olivier. I mean, really, like, there's so many people who were like big at the time who you probably wouldn't know right now. Gene Hackman, though. I'm just trying to skipping through people that you guys probably won't know. Oh yeah, Anthony Hopkins has got a little role in here. This is a good movie, and I think usually a movie like this, it's sort of historical and solid, but not like super entertaining, like sad, harrowing. I only watch it once. But I know I watched this guy at least 2 or 3 times. It was very interesting and handled lots of characters at once, and it was worth studying. As I say, I'm a big disciple of William Goldman, and he's just, there's a reason why he is known as the man. The one of the greatest screenwriters who's ever lived. Elliot Gould, if you know Elliot. There's a lot more people in this movie who you're going to be like, oh, I know that person. But this is like, generations away from me, let alone, what it might be for you, unless you're like an older listener. This was made in 1977, before I was even born. But the movie, I think, holds up and is really a cool flick, about the war. That between that movie and Patton, you basically see how, it's all propaganda, like this is like what they tell us. So, I mean, but at the end of the day, this is the story that they tell us of how we won World War II, of how we ended the war. So from that standpoint, it's really, really excellent. And just like the amount of fucking great actors that are in it, the fact that it's historically like fairly accurate to, to what was going on during that time, makes it, really worth your time. Great actors, real history. It's cool. All right, so we're just going to move on to number 9, Quiz Show, which is the only one of his movies that he directed that I am putting on here. Quiz Show was really neat. I think it was loosely based on some of the things that were going on with some of the early quiz shows back in the day. You've got a young, what's his name? The Jesus Man. What's the Jesus his fucking name? It's the Jesus Man. I have to look him up and pull all this stuff. I wrote down tons of this information, and of course I'm like 3 into it. I'm like, wait a second. John Turturro. I didn't think I'd not be able to remember his name. John Turturro plays like the quiz show guy who's like sort of in this battle and like, TV sort of thing, and then like in trying to get this professor that they hire to cheat. It's an interesting story, and it's very well told, well directed. In addition to being an actor, Robert Redford went on to make a lot of movies, both as a producer and a director. And his directing catalog is pretty groovy. Like I said, I'm a Robert Redford fan as like an actor mostly, but the movies that I've seen of his that he directed himself were excellent. Like I said, The Legend of Bagger Vance was excellent. It's not like it's a golf movie period piece, so it wasn't something I was excited to watch again. It's not necessarily a favorite, but it was a good movie. The Horse Whisperer I barely remember, but again, I remember it being solid as well. The River Runs Through It, I remember being solid. Quiz Show's the one that I remember more so. I think I've seen Quiz Show like maybe twice. It come along on television another time years later, and I remember I watched it. His first movie, too, I remember being pretty good. Ordinary People. It's got Donald Sutherland in it and Mary Tyler Moore. I mean, most of these movies I saw when I was so young. Like, this is like, an impressionable writer who's like, studying William Goldman and trying to watch all the movies of the actors who I really like the best or, think are good. So I used to work at Blockbuster, and I used to, have a lot of friends who worked at the movie theater. So I'd get in to see so many movies, but it didn't necessarily mean that I would see them again. And now I'm going to be 43 on the 19th on, was that Friday or something? Today's 17, 18, yeah, on Friday. I'm 43. So, the distance between me and a number of these movies is probably 30 years. So forgive me, I'm doing this because I love Robert Redford genuinely, and I'd like to be able to talk about him and some of his stuff. But, I kind of thought I was going to make the list longer, but I got to a certain point where I was just like, I don't remember that one well enough. But they all are good enough that I have left my viewings of all these Robert Redford movies going, Robert Redford's the man. And pretty much anything he's in, I'm willing to watch it. And I'm probably going to like it because I like him. Even things he's directed. So, please don't take it as a mark against Redford that I'm like, I don't remember all of these movies. A lot of the things that he has made generally have been, like serious movies as opposed to like, comedies and things, like it's not as easy to remember some of these movies because they're not the type of movie that I watch multiple times, which is more like a comedy film or an action film or like heist films or, crime movies, things like that. He's definitely got a lot that like, one and done, but they're good. They're good flicks. All right, so we're gonna get into now we're getting into the ones that are like the biggest deal to me. Starting at number 8 with The Natural. Just such a classic baseball movie. I've seen this movie again a long time ago, and I've seen bits and pieces of it ever since then because it's like this great feel-good baseball movie. Granted, there's some drama and whatnot in it as well, but yeah, man, it's like Bull Durham and like so many other like classic baseball flicks. This is one of them. The Natural. Highly recommend Robert Redford in anything, but he's just he fits as a pro baseball guy. You believe him. I mean, he's believable in everything. I like him. He's a natural. He's a natural at all the things. This is the one of my 8 that I remember like the least, and if I remembered it better, like I might put it higher on the list because I love a good sports movie. But all of these other movies after this are the ones that stuck with me for one reason or another. And I didn't just remember that it was good. I remembered some additional pieces about it. And number 7, we have Sneakers. I was a little disappointed in this movie because it was a little more serious than I thought it was going to be based on the trailers. It's got a great ensemble cast, including Dan Aykroyd, Sidney Poitier, and River Phoenix before he passed away. It's about this group of I don't know. It's kind of a mix. Like their tagline for the movie was that, like, I forget what they called a couple of the guys, a librarian or something like that. But it's a lot of like ex-military guys, ex-criminal guys who have all formed a company where they get hired by companies to go and steal things, break into things just to see if it's possible. Like what's going to happen if I go, if I go try to rob them, will I succeed? They've got a big security system here. Let's go test it out. There is something really light and wonderful about this, especially because of the inclusion of Dan Aykroyd in it, who plays a back-in-the-day Jesse Blaze Snider, conspiracy theorist, who's just like, meh, 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 and he's right about everything he says. And Robert Redford plays the leader of the group. Sidney Poitier's there in a great supporting role. River Phoenix is great. It's really like a really wonderful cast. And there's just a hell of a lot of charm in the movie. And it's, really just dealing with so much fucking reality is maybe the one reason why, like, you might not come away loving it, because it's like, oh God, like reality right up in your face. And a lot of our reality sucks, this like, corrupt government officials and, people just getting embroiled in something they shouldn't be because they know too much and like all this kind of shit. So it's a lot of secret government agencies, and they're just like in the mix with these people trying to screw them over. Will they or won't they survive their screwing? That's up for you to find out. I'm not telling you. All right, at number 6, a great one. I haven't seen it in a long time. I've watched this movie like 3 times, but it's been like at least 20 years. I used to own it. Loved it when it came out. I'm a huge fan of director Tony Scott, True Romance and many other movies. Spy Game with Brad Pitt. I was a budding fan of Brad Pitt, big fan of Tony Scott, and love Robert Redford. So, when this movie came out, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Fucking Robert Redford in a spy movie directed by Tony Scott. Like, I'm in. And I love this movie, and I bought it and love it. But I mean, like, I really genuinely love all Tony Scott movies. And for whatever reason, I haven't watched it since. The trailer didn't really remind me of a lot of things about it, except I did enjoy the interaction between, Robert Redford and Brad Pitt. I really like, when Redford would show up with Paul Newman, it was a little bit like, here's Newman, the older statesman, and here's Robert Redford, the younger statesman. So it's cool to see him play with Brad Pitt, because it was a similar sort of like handing of the torch. And granted, they're not exactly like playing opposite each other as like peers and friends. He is in like a higher position to him than the other one. Then Robert Redford's in a higher position than Brad Pitt. But I really enjoyed this. The look of it, the movie was excellent, and I watched it a few times. I just kind of tend to not. I think when I watched it a year later, I was like, oh, I barely remember it, but I really liked it. And I watched it again, and I was like, oh, this is great. I barely remember it, but but it really is good. Retiring CIA agent Nathan Muir recalls his training of Tom Bishop while working against agency politics to free him from his Chinese captors. So it's like a whole like spy game thing, where he's manipulating the person that he's like working with them and whatnot. It's a weirdo, like just spy movie where, which is, I guess, half the reason why I can't remember it, because it's just like lots of subterfuge and things going on, and I forget exactly how it all played out. But I enjoyed the hell out of it. Another great one from Tony Scott, another great one from Robert Redford, and a new one for Brad Pitt to add to his belt. I've never done a Tony Scott episode, but I'm such a big Tony Scott fan. I should really, just add it to my little list, because I have like a list of like, all right, well, if I run out of things to talk about, let's talk about this. If I run out of things to talk about, let's talk about this. But I mean, seriously, like, there's so many good Tony Scott movies. I mean, Deja Vu is like weak compared to Man on Fire. Spy Game's wonderful. Enemy of the State's a good one. The Fan's a good one. Crimson Tide is great. True Romance is one of my favorite movies of all time. The Last Boy Scout, great one. Days of Thunder, great one. Beverly Hills Cop 2, great one. Top Gun, great one. I mean, like, just there's a lot of great Tony Scott movies. And like, seriously, if you're a budding filmmaker, his movies just look so damn cool, man. Like they look great, shot great. Just he makes good flicks. So highly recommend this one, despite the fact that it's still we're still in the group that I remember a little less than some of the other ones. But I love that flick, and if I had the opportunity to watch it tonight, it was free. I'll put it on. All right, at number 5. This is a cool one. You know, it's cool. The Spy Games as well, because like these are the movies, the 2 movies that I actually saw in theaters as a fan of this man. In addition to Captain America: Winter Soldier, but like I had become a fan of his, and then he was advertised in a movie, and I was like, oh cool, a Robert Redford movie, like a new one. This is amazing. Which Spy Games was one of those, and Spy Games was a little bit of a cheat because it was Tony Scott, and I would be seeing that any way you slice it. But The Last Castle was interesting. Features James Gandolfini. Not necessarily a movie that I'd jump out of my seat to see, but I was because it ended up being a lot better than I thought it was. Of course, I should have known, because Robert Redford's great. He's really good at picking films and stuff. But I don't know. There was a lot of hype for James Gandolfini at the time. I'm part Italian. I don't really like the glorification of the friggin' mafia in America. I really hate it. I'm also part Jewish, and there's a Jewish mafia. And if you try to talk about the Jewish mafia, they will call you an anti-Semite and all this stuff. There are criminal enterprises involved in every religion, every fucking racial group. And I don't like to glorify those people. I don't like people who are getting away with fucking murder. So, for me, as The Sopranos hype was at its highest, I was like, I like the show, but fuck that show at the same time. As I've kind of been with The Godfather and all these different things. So I wasn't on the big, let's go suck James Gandolfini's penis because he's in a mob thing, and we all love mob things. I just always find it so lame. To me, it would suggest that, so are you saying that given the opportunity, you'd be a piece of shit like these people as well and be killing people and extorting people and all that? Because I don't like that. I don't like to hear that, you are validating this just as a film goer. So it's not my favorite thing. Granted, I'm a geek. I'm the guy who fucking worships at the superheroes and shit. But I also appreciate film and whatnot. So I all put it into sort of a relative balance. But I don't really love mafia movies. And so I wasn't necessarily super into this. I didn't like that James Gandolfini was his aggressor to Robert Redford, and that Robert Redford was being put in jail. But I'm so glad I saw it, because this movie was excellent. Robert Redford is this 5-star brigadier general who has something go wrong and ends up in a military prison that is run by James Gandolfini. And James Gandolfini isn't exactly evil. He's just this heartless asshole. Who's just sort of thinking that he's doing the right thing, but he's got a draconian prison system there. And these are all former military people, and they're being treated like prisoners. They're not being treated with any amount of respect. They're not being treated like they are people who have were trained to follow orders and, are used to a certain amount of, not decorum, but military structure. They're used to structure, and but they're just being treated like criminals and really not great here. And he comes into this prison. And James Gandolfini's character initially has all this sort of reverence for him because he is, he's the fucking this big deal general. He's you, this guy, we should be building prisons named after him, or building bases named after him, I think he says in the movie. Not locking him up in here with all these other criminals. So this military man that this guy really respects, he becomes the head of the snake of all the prisoners, fighting against him, trying to get him fired, trying to get this prison closed down for some of the bad practices that he's got going on in the prison. And it's such a different part for James Gandolfini. Really changed my mind about James Gandolfini, because I just kind of pigeonholed him as a certain type of thing. I'd seen him in True Romance and a couple other things where he was this, and that's interesting. This isn't the Tony Scott. I was Tony Scott directed True Romance, and we're talking about Spy Games. Now we're talking about Last Castle, not directed by Tony Scott. I don't know. His character is much more of a smart version of not Elmer Fudd, but just like some sort of like, backwoodsy American military guy. Redford really makes him look like a fool. There's a lot of great little cameo parts, actors in small parts in The Last Castle, including people like Mark Ruffalo, who you would recognize, and then a ton of people who you probably would be less quick to recognize. But Delroy Lindo has a part in the movie. Like the person I was going to name or reference was Clinton Collins Jr., who plays Aguilar. He's great. You'll recognize him. He's a really good actor, and I like him and everything I see him in. But he's not a leading man, so his name hasn't been friggin' promoted to me a million times. But, he's in a prison, so there's lots of people in the background and people with little bit parts. And, it's driven by the fact that Redford basically goes into this prison and acts like he's not in a prison. And, and just like it's really a strong performance from Redford and a strong villain performance by James Gandolfini. So I recommend The Last Castle. I think it's a movie that you'd probably be really glad to have put on and be like, oh, wow, nobody ever told me about this kind of thing. Because like it was a big hit, like it's been spoken about tons after the fact, but it really is an excellent movie. All right. Getting into the top 4 now, and we're finally getting into some of the other movies written by William Goldman. One of which is called The Hot Rocks. And I quite like The Hot Rocks. It's a weird movie for me because it's funny. Like sometimes you like go back in time and, you watch one of these old movies. And, it's made in 1972. I'm born in 1982. And like, clearly, like when you see the material, like trailers for this movie and stuff, like clearly these 4 main guys in this movie, they had all done something, like enough of a something that was like enough of a hit or known about on whatever level that their names carried a certain amount of weight. Now, I was there watching it because it was adapted from a novel by Donald E. Westlake by William Goldman, and I love William Goldman. And also, it's a comedy, action, crime, caper. I mean, like that's like my favorite kind of flick. Something that'll make me laugh, but also at the same time action and some crime, caper kind of thing. I'm totally into that. So I was really excited to watch the movie, and and I think my dad had told me it was like an ensemble with like a bunch of really big actors from the day. Well, the big actors from the day are George Segal, who, like, I knew George Segal from, like, some things. But, like, I mean, really, I was not particularly, like, George Segal, I'd seen him in fucking Cable Guy, like, as an old man and stuff. Like, I hadn't really seen George Segal in a lot of things, and, like, that I couldn't remember at the time. And then the 2 other main characters are Paul Sand, who plays Greenberg, and Ron Liebman, who plays Murch. I don't really know these guys. They'll tell you that they're in some movies that like are a big deal that I don't really know anything about, like The Main Event, Sweetland, and Erie, Indiana. Like I don't know. Those are movies of Paul Sand. And Ron Liebman was in Zorro the Gay Blade and as Esteban, and he was in Garden State, which I don't remember Garden State very much. Kaz and Autofocus, and I don't know any of these movies. But these were like big deal movies that these guys were in. Of the time. At the time they were like big enough that people might, recognize them. The guy who directed this movie, Peter Yates, he directed Cull. Which I've never seen Cull in its entirety. I've seen little bits and pieces of it, honestly. But it's what an interesting time capsule because all the actors in the movie, they're great. They really are genuinely. George Segal, who I did know, is excellent as a foil for Robert Redford, and but Ron Liebman and Paul Sands, they're really charming, and it's just so clear that the movie thinks that these actors and like these actors, like the way it's shot, it's very stylized and it's very like kind of Ocean's 11-y of like, look at this handsome criminal guy. Look at this handsome criminal guy. Let's give him a moment to shine. It's so clearly like, these are some people from back in the day. And it was very funny. The premise of the movie, though, is just what makes it, one, it's PG, which is really cool. Great one to show to the kids, family, nice caper movie. Dortmunder and his pals, Dortmunder's Robert Redford, plan to steal a huge diamond from a museum. But this turns out to be only the first time they have to steal it. And that is the basic premise. They steal this diamond, and it keeps basically going missing. It ends up here, it ends up there. Now we got to break into this place to steal it. Now we got to break into this place to steal it. There's a Martin Lawrence movie called Blue Streak that's actually a similar premise where he hides his diamond in the building that then becomes a police building 20 years later or 15 years later when he's out of jail. He gets out, he goes to where he hid the diamond. It's a police station. Now he's got to pretend to be a police officer so he can slowly get in there to steal the diamond. But it's all a con. It's all him pretending to be a police officer the whole time. But this is, it's like the Ocean's 11. We open up the movie, they stole something. Now that thing ends up somewhere else. Now they got to go steal that thing from another place. Now it goes from there to this other place. Now they got to go steal the thing. It's hysterical. Really, I watched this movie a bunch of times, but it's been like 15, 20 years. So a lot of the details are really hazy for me, but I quite enjoyed it. And I just loved the basic premise of like, well, what if you stole something and then it ended up somewhere else and then you had to steal it there and just had to keep stealing it because it kept not exactly working out, kept not ending with you having it. The Hot Rocks is probably one of those movies that you won't necessarily see on a list of the greatest Robert Redford movies of all time or whatever else, because not a lot of people know that one, or I should say not as many people know that one. I went, and I kind of wanted to share this with you anyway, just because like this was, I went and I was just looking at like a lot of them, like what do other people write? I said, my experience with Robert Redford is so weird. I'm not really his generation, so like I didn't like grow up watching his movies. There's a lot of movies of his that I'd like to see. What are they recommending? So just like within that context for you, what are some of these other people recommending? This list I just found the most interesting. It recommended The Twilight Zone. And early, before he was getting into film as a actor, he did lots of TV stuff. Playhouse 90s, Perry Mason, Maverick, Alfred Hitchcock Presents. They're recommending some of that. But Barefoot in the Park, which isn't something that I would be interested in, but that's Robert Redford stars, and that's one of the ones they recommend here. They recommend some of the ones that we're going to talk about. Downhill Racer in 1969, which is one I've always wanted to see, and actually more so after reading this article about what they said. There's another movie that they worked together on called The Candidate, which is one of the other Robert Redford movies that I've always wanted to see, but I just haven't had a chance to see it. Jeremy Johnson's on this list, which I think I've seen some of Jeremy Johnson. I think I really liked it, but I couldn't remember it, so I didn't put it on my list. The Way We Were in 1973 with Barbra Streisand. I think, again, I watched some of that one too, but I couldn't really remember it. It's mentioning a couple of the other ones that I have on my list, but I haven't gotten to yet. The Great Gatsby in 1974 for Great Gatsby fans. 3 Days of the Condor. I've never seen it. Really want to see that one. That one's I've like been in my queue, almost ready to watch many times before. More from my list. The Natural from my list. A movie called Havana, which I never really even knew anything about until I was reading this list. He's got some good co-stars in this movie. Lena Olin, Raul Julia I really like. And then some movie called All Is Lost from 2013, which I hadn't seen, and a movie from 2018 called The Old Man and the Gun, which sounds awesome. It's about like a guy who's a bank robber, but he doesn't want to give it up, and he basically gives up a relationship with this lady instead to like go do this thing, right? So, cool list. A lot of these ones were ones that I've never gotten around to watching. But what's not on the list here is Sneakers, is Spy Game, is The Last Castle, is The Hot Rocks. So those ones are kind of the ones that I'm most excited to just recommend to you because they're great movies that I happen to have seen, but I don't necessarily see tons of people, screaming their praises. Spy Games, maybe compared to some of the other Tony Scott movies, isn't quite as memorable. I really like Spy Games a lot. I really like The Last Castle a lot. That just happened to be coming out while I was like a film reviewer and I would go see things, but that didn't have like a super wide release. Sneakers, I think, was a bigger like release, but like not as big of a success as considered like a flop or something. But Sneakers is really cool and an interesting premise and worth your time. So so the Hot Rocks in particular, though, I highly recommend it. Really, really fun. And even though I'm not, I still have not become more familiar with the main actors of the Hot Rocks since watching it. They're great. They're all movie stars. I mean, within the confines of like what you expect from some buddy heist comedy, and here's our candidates, and we're advertising them all like they're a big deal because they are. They feel like a big deal within the movie. So even though you're not going to really know anybody besides maybe the screenwriter William Goldman adapting the novel and Robert Redford, Hot Rocks is number 4 on my list. All right, now getting into the final 3 here. A lot has been said about these movies. All 3 of them, they are favorites of mine. All 3 of them. 2 of them are favorites of mine because of William Goldman. Both of these movies, he won his Oscars for Best Original Screenplay and Best Adapted Screenplay. And William Goldman has nothing to do with my number 1 with a bullet. But we'll get to that in a second. So let's start with number 3, All the President's Men. It was nominated for 8 Academy Awards at the time. It won 4 of them, including an Oscar to William Goldman for Best Adapted Screenplay. Now, Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman are both playing famous newspapermen. Now, the only thing that I will say about all of this is I have not watched these movies since all of the truth has come out about the JFK assassinations and Watergate. Major admissions of what has happened with the CIA, what they did killing, not just killing JFK, but also what they were up to framing Nixon with Watergate. So it's be very interesting actually to watch it from this standpoint. And I wonder, it actually, for me, it brings into question all of these fucking Academy Award nominations. Because if this movie is essentially representative of propaganda for a crime the CIA committed, but they wanted to make it look as legit as possible, well, this movie does help to send the notion that this is all legit. And from the perspectives of the 2 newspapermen, Carl Bernstein, played by Dustin Hoffman, and Bob Woodward, played by Robert Redford, it may very well be. Like their characters, this is 2 newspapermen trying to figure out a thing. Were they ultimately fed the information from the CIA and other sources so that something like this would happen? And now, oh yes, let's have it win lots of Oscars so that it can be seen as the truth. This is the truth. Look, we made a movie about it. Now it's the truth, solidifying your truth for forever. The Washington Post reporters, Bob Woodward, Carl Bernstein, they uncovered the details of the Watergate scandal that leads to President Richard Nixon's resignation. It's a very simple, basic premise here, but this is this time point in history. William Goldman didn't write this. He adapted it from the screenplay. Was the screenplay, looked over by CIA guys? I don't know. I think probably. So all of this is really, really interesting piece of history that I would now contest, but it doesn't change the fact that the movie itself is quite engaging. Again, this one's another PG-13, a PG rated one. Earlier back in the day, there was less PG-13s and less there was less ratings going around. So there's a lot more PGs, but I wouldn't watch this with your kids. Hot Rocks, maybe, yeah. This is just it's a little stuffy. It's really a movie for intellectuals. People who are interested in like what's really going on and how some of these jobs are working and whatnot. Granted, the truth that has come out through the CIA has brought all of it into question, but I do think it still stands as an incredible movie, an incredible adaptation of a book that was, a political thriller. It's about, newspaper men and all this, but it's exciting still, and that there's really a lot to like about this, and the performances of Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman are fucking excellent. So that's number 3 on my list here. Number 2 on the list is the other movie that William Goldman won the Oscar for. It is Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Butch and Sundance is great. It's really one of the better films ever made. It is a little bit weird when you look at it historically now, because in the middle of it, there's a Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head complete romantic musical number between Paul Newman and Robert Redford that I think made people scratch their heads at the time, but because of it was of the time, they mostly just ignored that and moved on with their lives. Because what Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid really is a historical historical interpretation of Butch and Sundance, who were real cowboys in the Old West. The writer William Goldman famously had read about just some of the exploits of Paul Newman's character Butch. In particular, he had made a deal with a certain judge that that he would leave the state and never come back. And then he would never have to see him again, in trouble for stealing things. And basically the judge went, all right, I said, if I could trust you to actually leave the state and never come back, deal. And William Goldman just found that very humorous. There were a lot of interesting little, it's a worthy subject to dig into, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and the truth, and some of the truthful stories that started William Goldman on his writing about them. Because actually some of the stories that he heard that inspired him in the first place are actually funnier and more interesting than what's actually shows up in the film, even though the film has plenty of good moments like that. Ultimately, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, they got the Hole in the Wall gang, and Butch is the brains, and Sundance is the brawn, and he's this really great, gunfighter who can take people out, and Butch knows he's got that guy at his side, so he goes out and friggin' does everything that he needs to do, knowing that he's got the toughest fucking hombre on his side, helping him to make everything work out. And they're real, genuine, good friends. It's the classic thing, at the end, and I don't want to spoil it, but I mean, it's been spoiled so many times, of, going out like Butch and Sundance, where, they get cornered and they're friends and they got to go out doing what they do. This is a favorite film for lots of people in the world. It's not my favorite film, but it is a excellent film that I've seen many times before, and I really taught me a lot about adaptation. All of the things when it comes to William Goldman. I'm such a student of good writing, and he is a great writer. So just studying Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and All the President's Men, and how things were adapted, and seeing the process. William Goldman wrote a lot of books on writing, so you can get a lot more information in terms of his writing process and whatnot through William Goldman himself than you can for most filmmakers or whatever. Most of the time you're watching special edition DVDs or whatever it might be, or some things on YouTube nowadays. But with William Goldman, you can go read about these 5 screenplays, 4 screenplays. He's got multiple books on writing where it's just literally just screenplays and him commenting on some of the screenplays and giving some perspective on stuff. Invaluable for those of you who are budding writers out there. Again, these are things that I haven't read in a really long time. I had a pile of every William Goldman novel that I could get my hands on at the time. Every book that he read on writing, that he wrote on writing, and I would watch basically as many of the movies based on his stuff as I could get my hands on. And it was a worthy process. He's a really good person to study. And Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. It's funny because it is it's an original screenplay that William Goldman won an Oscar for. Even though it's based on historical events, so it's a little bit of a mixed bag there of is it, an adapted screenplay? Is it? But I mean, he's adapting it completely from real life. But something like The Princess Bride or Marathon Man that he wrote, they're complete works of fiction and they're great. Or Magic, which is it's a horror movie based with a dummy. fucking William Goldman right all over the map. It's another one of the reasons why I love him so much. It's just like really a lot of different types of material, and the stuff that he wrote was very balanced. You know, humor, action, everything. As far as, you know, Robert Redford's concerned, I mean, yeah, you know, this movie was one of the first ones that I saw him in. And if this movie didn't sell me on Robert Redford being cool, because he's got a little bit of a sense of humor in this movie, which is like a really great role for him. Because Paul Newman is almost like a comic relief, but he's like focused and he's making plans and stuff. But he's like just sort of a bit of a fuck arounder. And not the finder outer, or I should say, not the person who makes you find out, which is what Sundance is. And Sundance has a proper modicum of like humor to be friends with somebody like this guy. And of course, I'm sure William Goldman kind of had to create that, like imagining like, well, who's this guy who's like tooling around with him, who's like a gunfighter, but obviously he's got a little bit of a sense of humor because Butch is fucking funny. And that thing, the Robert Redford's character being able to be both really tough and like cutthroat, you know, like there's a great opening scene, the bit where like, you know, he's kind of like threatening everybody and he's just like so believable in this tough guy role. But then whenever the moment for levity needed to arrive, you completely felt that with him as well. It was just, you know, it was balanced that he could be this tough guy who also had a good sense of humor and a heart of gold, you know, loyalty to his friend. You know, it's really the two of them both being loyal friends. Yeah, I love Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I've seen that movie many, many times over the years, and I'm sure I will watch it more as time goes on. But you know, two great flavors, one fucking yummy meal. And, you know, Paul Newman is I think I've done a Paul Newman episode before. If I haven't, I should. I'm like going to fucking follow up next week and do a Paul Newman episode. But in case I don't anytime soon, let's talk about what will be one of the tops of my list for Paul Newman, as well as Mr. Robert Redford. And that is my number one favorite classic Robert Redford movie. It's The Sting. Love The Sting. It's really very much a Robert Redford movie, even though it's Paul Newman and Robert Redford. Robert Shaw plays the bad guy in it. You know, Redford and Paul Newman had both done a lot of movies like this leading up to this. You know, Paul Newman's The Hustler and other things. You know, like he had been shown as a criminal scamp, figuring things out, you know, in the underworld before. But now he was getting older and he's playing the elder statesman in this movie, even though it's like a duo. He's a bit of a not a straight man, but like a little bit of like a quieter part. You know, number two to Robert Redford, who's like the one who really has to actively do everything and bring this movie full circle. So, highly recommend this one. It's such a classic, and like so many movies that are based on it, from the Ocean's 11 and like all heist movies are based on the classics of the genre, and The Sting is probably the most classic of the genre. You know, because it's Paul Newman and Robert Redford, I mean, your leads are just two of the most charming men on planet Earth. They have wonderful chemistry, as they did in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And, you know, it's just always nice to be introduced to the antagonist, who like you really would love to see them get what's coming to them. And even better when like they can get what's coming to them in like a really clever way that like just like disarms them and frustrates them. And, you know, just having two con men pulling this huge con. And I mean, like the whole thing of the movie, it's really got a cute way in which it's written and which it lays the things out, and like, you know, it's kind of teaching you about cons and what a not convicts, but like con jobs, you know, when people are tricking people. And they're right from the very beginning, they're like, we got a guy, I want to try to get money, like how should we get this money out of him, what are we going to do, you know, he likes to gamble, we're going to trick him into this thing. It's really interesting because they basically create a speakeasy, they create a whole underground bar / gambling establishment for this person to come to so that they can scam him. And they have a lot of people involved in this situation because they have to make it look like they got a place. So it's always filled up with people and like all. It's very elaborate, very cool, and you never really know exactly what's going on, even though so much of the premise of the movie is kind of to like educate you on what types of con jobs there are and different ways of thinking about these things that these type of people, these con men, spend a lot of time. So, when you see it, I really, it's so charming and fun. Like, so you're going to enjoy the process. But like, unlike a lot of the movies, it's like once you've seen the mechanics of it all, you're kind of like, okay, I'm good. This movie is going to keep bringing you back because it really just keeps you unaware of everything that's going on and exactly how it's going to, roll until the very end. And there's plenty of movies that have gone on to do this, and I believe the majority of them have been inspired by The Sting. The Sting manages to twist and turn and twist and turn and ultimately keep you in the dark about everything that it's doing and its characters are doing, but not in a way that's unsatisfying, in a way that's totally satisfying. So when the whole thing, resolves, you just go, oh, fuck those guys. It's fucking great. Yes. Yes. I mean, seriously, whenever I see, to this day, the box for The Sting, I just, it's like, it's one of those paintings I forget the name of the painter, and there's a lot of film buffs out there who know the name of the guy who used to do so many of these paintings, and you'd recognize the person who painted it if you saw the cover. I'm pulling it up right now so I can look at it with you. But, just like they're in their hats and Robert Redford's got his arm around Paul Newman and they're both smiling. It's fucking wonderful, man. It really, really is. It's directed by George Roy Hill, who's famous for lots of other movies. But I mean, the trailer that I watched for it earlier today was actually for a re-release of it. And seriously, if they made a re-release of it now, I'd go see it. This says winner of 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture in 1973. All it takes is a little confidence. On IMDb, where I had gotten that information, it had said that only 4 had won. Huh. That's upsetting. I'm going to have to fucking resolve that shit. Your movie poster here says that you won. Or was I looking at one of the other movies? Oh, was it All the President's Men that won? Oh, wow. Oh, no, I didn't look at The Sting. I was looking at All the President's Men, which had been nominated for 8 and won 4. This won 7. Holy shit! Man, I'm glad I filled this up because I was about to wrap up. And seriously, my number one pick here. If you need some reasons to watch the fucking Sting, it won the Oscar for Best Picture in 1974. And Julia Phillips became the first female producer to win the Best Picture category. And Oscar winner for Best Director, George Roy Hill. Oscar winner, Best Writing, Story, and Screenplay based on factual material or material not previously published or produced by David S. Ward. And I'm going to look him up before we finish this too. Best Art Direction and Set Decoration. It won for Best Costume Design. It won for Best Film Editing. It's definitely great, really well edited. Best Music, Scoring, Original Song Score or Adaptation. And not focused on that, but yeah, it definitely has a really great score to it. Really, really fun. Fits the movie well, along with the editing. The editing and the music kind of go hand in hand. Best Actor in a... so those were all the wins. But Robert Redford was nominated for Best Actor in a Leading Role. Nominated for Best Sound. Nominated for Best Cinematography. It really is. It's a great movie. One of my favorite movies of all time. One of those movies that I really feel like has just a little bit of everything and is hard not to like. I can't imagine too many people that I would put on The Sting for, and it would roll credits and they'd go, yeah, I just didn't really like it. That's not going to happen here. So seriously, do yourself a favor. Get yourself into Robert Redford. Get yourself even deeper into Robert Redford than I've mentioned. I've mentioned at least a half a dozen, no, more than that maybe, 8, 9, 10 of his movies, whether he directed it or he starred in it, that I haven't had a chance to see, but I would love to see. And he is wonderful. He's one of those actors that people would say, I like Brad Pitt. He's good at picking roles. Yeah, some people are good at picking roles and they generally don't pick things that suck. Robert Redford's one of those guys. The Sting, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, All the President's Men. If you haven't seen those 3 movies, do yourself a fucking favor. Then meanwhile, secondarily, if you haven't seen, and you probably haven't, The Hot Rocks, The Last Castle with James Gandolfini, Spy Game by Tony Scott, Sneakers with Dan Aykroyd and Sidney Poitier and River Phoenix, or The Natural, and you like baseball, like go fucking see those movies. And, Quiz Show, Bridge Too Far, great stuff too. Of course, Captain America the Winter Soldier has just included that for shits and giggles. But still, technically a Robert Redford movie and really good. Anyway, I am launching. It's supposed to launch today. I have a Kickstarter that's supposed to launch today. I don't know if it is actually going to launch today because I'm having some trouble with the Kickstarter website. Basically, we had a box set that we had people signing up for of all my music, and I decided to just do the solfeggio transmissions and to really focus on that because I want to talk to everybody about healing frequency and music and how I made this stuff, and there's a lot to talk about. So I switched to campaigns, and I actually launched the box set thing for 5 days and took it down just so the people who had signed up for notifications would get notified that we switched pages. We've got a new page, so it's easier to find with the algorithms, solfeggio, healing frequencies, all that stuff. But it's supposed to launch today or the next few days. Hopefully you'll end up hearing about it. It's solfeggio healing frequency music. If you type in Jesse Blaze Snider, type in solfeggio healing frequency music, SOLFEGGIO frequency music, you will find the campaign. There's a free gift of greatest hits album of some of the best stuff from all the albums that I put out so far, and a cover album that we're giving away for free for anybody who orders a copy. There's also something really personal to me. There's an album called the Love Record, the Heart Record, which is songs that I had written during the same period of time that I was working on these songs for this, what became this album. Songs that I wrote for my mom, wrote for my kids, and actually I've written these songs over the past 30 years, but I finished them during this time when I was making all this music, and I decided to do these solfeggio frequencies. I started using AI as a backing band to finish songs that I had written years ago. I wrote them as complete songs. I could sing you the entire song without any music, but I hadn't figured out the music with a band. And I used the AI to figure out the music and produce a lot of music. After I'd made 60 of them, somewhere early in the process, I started using healing frequencies because I always wanted to make my music out of healing frequencies. So for the first time ever, I could do that. And then all of a sudden I went, I should release this. This is healing frequencies. This is really good. Most healing frequency music is really boring. It's chanting and tones and things. And this is actually pop, blues, and soul and rock music that can heal you, that are good vibrations for your body. I was I want to turn this into something. So, but also because I wanted people to understand, this wasn't just, I'm making frequency music with AI. That's not what's happening. I made music. It was always intended to be made in healing frequencies. And I finally was able to do that using AI. So I made this heart record just to kind of show you how personal these songs were for me. I've been singing my daughter her Logan Lane song for fucking 10 years. And it's on that thing, and it sounds exactly like the song that I've been singing to her forever. Just now there's some backing music. And often the backing music is kind of light because all of the music that has been written is all based on my a cappella vocals. Me arranging the song, laying in all the lyrics, laying in all the melodies, singing some of the musical parts and whatnot, and just to give it an idea of how it feels, and then it interpreting my thing and giving it back to me. It's been a really gratifying process, especially just to have all of this great music that I love, that I wrote for people I care about in healing frequencies. So I'm really excited to offer it to you guys. Like I said, it launches today or in the next couple days. Go to Kickstarter, Solfeggio Healing Frequency Music. Jesse Blaze, any of those things should be able to get you to the page. If you go to my link tree for Jesse Blaze, you'll find fucking the first link at the very top of this thing. If you go to my Instagram or my Facebook, my Linktree link is there. It's the main link that's everywhere. If you go to our YouTube channel, Blacklight District Studio, it's all easy to find. There's another Kickstarter campaign that's going to be coming out after this, which is Sugar and Bones magazine. It's our answer to Heavy Metal magazine. It's a really, really cool magazine for creative people that's going to be demonstrating the arts at the highest level, but also having articles written by people who are working at the highest levels, and articles from people who love people working at the highest levels, on great movies, on great music, on great stuff. This is just, for me, I wanted to make a magazine that was for the fledgling artist, for somebody who wants to learn not just about one thing, but just about every aspect of the arts. And we're really excited about that, Sugar and Bones Magazine. You can sign up for notifications for that right now as well. Before I go, I'll just mention my my music podcast that we were doing, All Your Favorite Bands Suck. We had to take it down from Spotify because we were playing clips that were too long, they felt, from the bands. But you can find it everywhere else. Listen to it now while the clips from the bands are too long, because eventually when it comes back, I got to clip all these clips down and shorten everything and make the show a little bit less fun as far as I'm concerned, because I like to just put on some of these great songs and be like, oh my God, it's awesome. And then after a certain amount of time, I'm like, all right, let me play you more. But sometimes I'll play like whole songs or almost whole songs, and they got pissed off about that. But it's available everywhere, iTunes, every place except for Spotify that you might listen to podcasts. You can find it. It's called All Your Favorite Bands Suck. There's 55 bands, at least a dozen different genres. Lots of humor. If you like humor music, I love humor music, and I like to sing the praises of humorists. Anyway, without further ado, I skipped last Saturday's episode of the show because it was my son's birthday and I just didn't feel like doing it, but I definitely will do a show this weekend, a Coolest Pick or Coolest Classic. I'm actually getting backed up on Coolest Picks. I've got a couple that I want to talk about. There's a movie called Nona's that's really good. It's on Netflix with Vince Vaughn, and then there's another one from more recently. And I want to do K-pop Demon Hunters. I really think that one's worthy of talking about as well. So I hope you'll listen to a show on Saturday. It'll be one of those, or maybe another one. And either way, it'll be something that I love, that I think is worthy of your time. And then join me again back next Wednesday, maybe for a Paul Newman episode or a Tony Scott episode of The Coolest Geek Alive. Love you guys. Talk to you later. Peace. You've been listening to Coolest Geek Alive with me, your host, Jesse Blaze Snider. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe for more excellent geek culture content. Thanks for listening.
It's my favorite part! Isn't that heavy? I played that! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Coolest alive! It's gonna be fucking awesome. Stay with your tribe. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Revenge of the Geeks. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Week after weeks. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Laughing with you. It's gonna be fucking awesome. And crying sometimes too. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Spelling it out. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Making you shout. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Talking some shit. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Living the shit. My voice is fucking awesome. Food in our mouth. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Get in the mouth. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Tell all your friends. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Call right or text. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Raising the bar. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Straight to the stars. It's gonna be fucking awesome. It's starting soon. Straight to the top. Awesome. Passing the moon. It's gonna be fucking awesome. On with the show. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Ready, set, go. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Fucking awesome. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Just wait. You'll see. You'll all see. You'll all see.
The podcast playground. Hooray!